Thanks for coming. This is Sustaining Success. So we're gonna future-proofing your school's succession planning, issues that have been faced. I'm lucky enough to have the pleasure of working with these three gentlemen. I am Jason Sidmer. I'm Managing Director at Charter Impact. We are a financial back office provider, so we do AP, accounting, financial projection, budgeting, payroll, STIRS and PERS reporting, and student data, SIS compounds reporting. To my left, I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hello, everybody. Jason Watts, Executive Director for Scholarship Club. We are a TK3 organization with schools in Orange County, San Diego County.
Kennedy Emmanuel, CEO for ACE Charter Schools. We are middle schools and high school in East San Jose.
Bill Toomey, Superintendent for Ingenium Schools. We are TK through 8, approximately about 1,000 students. We are located in Compton Unified and 2 schools in LA Unified in the Valley. Thank you.
Cool. I am just going to tee things up. Try to take maybe 5 minutes because we're all actually in the room to listen to these gentlemen. But I think it's important that we speak to the people in the audience. So just a couple of questions to see who's with us. How many people here are running non-classroom based schools? Perfect. And how many are running classroom based schools? Perfect. So about 50-50, I think. In this instance, Jason, Kennedy, and Bill all run classroom based schools, but I think there's still going to be applicable, situations to all schools. Along with Bill and I worked together previously over like 5 years ago at a non-classroom based network and lots of overlap and experience with it. But who here owns their own facility? That's great. Investing for the future. Who here rents a facility? Who here wants to own in the future? Always good long-term strategic planning. Who here is from a single site school? And then who here is from a multi-site? So lots of multi-site. And I think that that's what we're going to talk about is the experience with that. But again, I think it all trickles down. Who here has a surplus of cash and is currently investing it? Surplus of cash, not investing. Who here is currently borrowing money? That's very good, yeah. But definitely want to make your money work for you also is like investing it, but happy no one here is struggling on the cash flow side of things. Is anyone here projecting a deficit this current year or in future years? Yeah, and we'll talk about it, but I think it's not uncommon these days with declining enrollment, with a lot of the one-time money being gone, that you were supposed to spend all that money in a way that was strategic and one-time in nature, and it was just really impossible. Who here is low performing on the dashboard? If anyone will be brave enough, yeah. Definitely a riskier landscape these days, not as charter friendly, and having that as a excuse to deny petitions as we're starting to see. Who here serves a really high end duplicated population? And then who here, does anyone have a low, like we have clients in the single digits at Charter Impact, so running the gamut of 99% to 8%. Anyone in the low teens or low 20s? Yeah. And then the last question, like, is anyone here doing specific programming tailored to STEM or career technical education? And yeah, I think it's important to understand or gauge who's in the room so we know how to address and try to make it as applicable to those. So thank you, everyone. With that, I think we understand the current turmoil that we face in the charter landscape, financial deficits, and it doesn't even have to be your financial deficit, as we always saw one school raise it, but Kennedy is, he has a school in Alum Rock. They currently have a $12 million deficit. I don't know how big it is. It might be higher.
No. Our deficit is
No, not the Allen Rock School, but the Allen Rock Unified School District. So like the surrounding school districts are in deficit.
Yeah.
Oakland Unified School District, I believe, has $100 million deficit. Their LAUSD is running a multi-billion-dollar deficit. So there is just these issues and environmental effects that then will also affect your schools. So even if it's not directly you, there's some thought of like, we closed this charter school, we gained some students back. Maybe that helps our budget deficit. And so just thinking about it holistically in that way. We talked about declining enrollment. I think it's always a focal point. Definitely situational and depends on your school and program and location. We have a lot of schools that might be academically underperforming. We have kids still recovering from, the pandemic and isolation and learning loss. We have teachers that feel burnt out and underpaid and underappreciated. And then we have some issues with like civic trust, school districts, board meetings that have gone off the rails, maybe not at yours, but at others. And so, setting the table, just showing you that declining enrollment. Maybe you've seen this chart before, but the trend isn't great. There's a finite number of kids in the state, and it is going down every year. As they move to other states, as the population decreases. So the same number of schools competing for a lower, a shrinking pool of eligible students. And then I talked about the multi-year funding. So this is like a funding tracker that we use internally at Charter Impact, but just as the conceptual of tracking your one-time funding, what you still have left in the arts, music, instructional, in the learning recovery, emergency block grant, ELOP, any of those multi-year fundings to make sure that you're planning. I hate to use the word a cliff, but this funding does drop off and you want to make that as gradual as possible by being strategic with that planning. So with that.
So I think, yes, I think I discovered a spy in this room. When you were doing your survey, someone did not raise their hand for any other questions. So that means you don't operate a classroom-based, non-classroom based.
I'm a vendor.
Yeah, okay.
Just here to learn.
Yeah, I thought maybe you're a lawyer. And just to your point in terms of, to Jason's point in terms of the financial, so only one person here is running a deficit. I know in one of my schools, we're running a deficit. However, because of the enrollment trend that Jason talked about, where you're gonna have at least 500,000 less students. So there was 6.3 7 years ago, we're down to 5.8. And we're gonna get down, according to that chart that we saw, to 5.4 million by 2034. So if you're not in financial distraught, you may be, right? And for me, finance and enrollment are tied at the hip. For me, a financial deficit just means that you didn't pay attention to your enrollment and now you're paying the price. So it's just a matter of timing. But for us, when I walked into ACE 3 years ago, I walked into a $9 million financial cliff. And they told me it was 4 years out. It was really 2 years out. And it was half of that was due to the enrollment decline of the past 7 years. And then the other half, $4.5 million, was due to one-time COVID fund sunsetting. And also I found one school had a deficit, as I mentioned. And then, thank you. And then the other school had basically a minimum reserve, and the other two were basically break even. So again, the cost for me was the cost of the ending of the COVID funds, the decline in enrollment, and also my whole financial back office had basically left. I didn't have a CFO, I didn't have a senior accountant, and my business manager had left like 2 days before I got there. So, and I'll get into the solution, but thankfully that's how I discovered Charter Impact. And so for me, even though that was, you walk in and you don't have a financial department, that can look like a bad thing. For me, it actually ended up being a good one, because the finance department that we had really was not high quality. And then again, enrollment here, this is, basically just the same thing as financial deficit. For us, the enrollment decline, again, 40 out of the 58 counties in California are projected to have a decline by 2034. Right, so if you're in one, so how many folks here are in a county or district that is experiencing increase in enrollment? Okay, okay, so how many decreasing? Okay, how many just stable? Okay, all right. So as you can see, and that's going to change. So you may be in an increase in a stable environment, but in the next 10 years, you may find yourself in a decrease in environment. If you're one of those 40 counties, you can go to the Department of Education, to Financial State Department of Finance, and you can look at the trends there. And you can see whether your county is in one of those projected to have a decline. And so the causes for us was basically the same cost as really, if you see across the nation, this decline in enrollment, what you see is that it's due to low birth rates over the past decade and a half, right? And this low birth rates are projected to continue for the next 10 years. And then if you're in a state like California, you also have the high cost of living. And then if you're in a county like I am in Santa Clara, you also have migration, you have changes in demographics and folks migrating out. In my own schools, we have students that are going back since the change of the administration. Yet I have students that are going back to their home country, like Colombia. And then the other cause for me in this, your reputation could be a good or bad thing. For us, we were known as a school of second chances. So the students came to us because they had some kind of difficulty in their current district. And so if they needed a small school environment, if they needed, more hand holding, they came to us. However, that same population actually decreased the number. So we found ourselves with a brand that just didn't have enough, market base. And now I'm going to pass it on to my colleague.
I just realized I have way more text on these slides. I didn't make these slides, don't blame me. Okay, I think number one is we're going through all these things. The number one thing you have to do is be honest with yourself. You as a leader, you as an organization, on not only what your challenges are, but what caused them. Because it's easy to kind of like gloss over what the actual causes of these challenges are because people don't want to get their feelings hurt. But you have to make tough decisions, and that starts with being honest. So part of this is due to COVID, as you'll see. For the schools that we run, some of our schools are in really challenged communities where COVID just ravished them. Specifically, in this case, one of the things I'm going to talk about is Santa Ana. We have a couple sites there. And we had a number of students who were in families where relatives that they were living with died. Or were hospitalized for long periods of time, had to move out, etc. And so it was more than just kids were not coming to school anymore in our classroom-based program. It's also what was happening at home was so demonstrative, made it very difficult for those kids to be participatory in the way they would normally be participatory in a day-to-day classroom-based program, let alone just the trauma that was caused. On top of that, this particular school, we have about 30% of our students who are dealing with homelessness in one way or another. And that population is 97% or so free or reduced lunch eligible. About half of the families don't speak English. So it's just one piece on top of another that COVID kind of came in like a thunderstorm and shocked us all. Now, what's interesting about this school is it was the top performing school for the most part in the entire area, particularly with the population we were serving. So much so that we had gotten this huge grant from the federal government, we got some recognition for it. But then things changed. So during COVID and then immediately after, talking about this 30% school population of students struggling with homelessness, it wasn't always 30, it was around 20, low 20s. But we had a pretty decent number of total students in these two sites. So to go up 8 to 10% in that population was a dramatic increase, not only in those students coming in, but the supports and services they require. So number of causes, again, the impact of COVID. We also, sorry, let me go back to the challenges. One of the ones I missed was inconsistent staffing and a lack of resiliency in the workforce. Raise your hand if you noticed in the last, let's say, 3 to 5 years, the people that are working for your schools, whoever they may be, seem to be less resilient than they were 5 years ago. Okay, that's an understatement, I'm sure. That is a deal. That is a thing. It's a real thing, as you all know. It impacts who we hire, how we hire, what happens after they come and work with us, for us, the population of kids that we are serving, and how sustainable that individual may be in that position. All these things reverberate from how either well you hire, how well you train, how well you create an environment to have longitudinal, sustainable, strong staffing modules. Okay, now moving on. You know, COVID impacted it. We also saw a change in ourselves in terms of the focus from really strong academic outcomes to we want to make sure everybody feels good and okay, and let's worry about their mental health. Understandably so. But we were doing that with everything and everyone, students and staff. And it caused us to shift, in my opinion, our focus too far away from why we are there in the first place, besides creating a safe environment for everyone. Our job is to educate. And we had some people who felt their job was more to be a counselor. So there were people who started their career, as you know, during this time. And they're like, I didn't sign up for this. I didn't sign up to be stuck on my computer at home teaching kids. I want to be in a classroom. I want to be around kids. So this caused a turnover from people who had a different preconception of what teaching should be. We also saw a huge reduction in the amount of and in the quality of candidates to choose from. So 6, 7 years ago, pre-COVID, 1 or 2 years prior to, you would see hundreds of people for, say, a teaching position in Orange County. It got down to like sometimes 4 or 5, and 3 or 4 of them were not the best options. So it was dramatic difference. We saw a lack of alignment between our professional development and the curriculum we're using because our focus was misguided. We saw inconsistent accountability because of all of these things that were factors. Certainly people not wanting to step on people's toes or going back to the whole how do people feel. There was a fear of being too stringent on some of the philosophies that we held really strong prior to. And of course, in these communities, the rising cost of living was really, really tough. It caused people to move. And with the move, you saw transient populations in terms of your overall enrollment, just kind of cycling through. So instead of maybe losing 25 to 50 kids from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, we're losing 150. And we're replacing those 150. The lack of consistency instructionally is really, really tough, especially on the teacher. I'll get this. Okay. Now, some of this I've already talked about. We had, high teacher staff burnout. Resilience was an issue, as we talked about. Even get into the classroom behavior issues once kids all returned. That was huge. So now, everybody's excited to come back to the classroom. But what did you come back to? A different world. Okay. We know what caused it, in a way. Some of the things I talked about on the previous slide. Again, not what everybody signed up for. We didn't have a great, in my opinion, support system for the mental health impact that we saw. We were not prepared for what was going to happen when we all returned. And then finally, student behaviors were buoyed by decreasing parent support, decreasing accountability on both sides in the home and the school site. Just a lack of alignment overall between our mission and vision, what we were doing successfully prior to, then what happened, and everyone returned.
A lot of similarities, I'm sure, between your schools and my colleagues here in regards to financial enrollment decline. I think if you're going to turn it around in a quick fashion, you really do need to rely on your team, your staff. Some of the burnout, I'm sure all of us can relate with post-COVID and teachers asking them to do more and going through a lot of stressors. So the one strategy that I implemented when I came on board in Ingenium was surveying staff. So we have a tradition each year of we do a stay interview. A lot of schools or companies do an exit interview. It's usually too late to get information when somebody's walking out the door. So annually, our HR department interviews each team member for about 20, 30 minutes, sometimes over phone, sometimes in person. Asked about 12 to 15 questions that really give you a lot of good information. We also use the Panorama survey to survey our staff and see kind of where they're at. So it really gave a lot of details inside of these sort of stressors or, burnout. One of the key statistics we saw was at a low level was resources. And at first I scratched my head, what does that mean? Resources can be a whole lot of different things. The Panorama survey is actually really good in that it asks usually like 8 to 10 sub questions under each category. And that gave us a lot of different information to work on with our staff. What resources are you talking about? What we came to find throughout this is the schools and all schools got a lot of money post-COVID. But what we found was it added staff and some programs, but really didn't align with helping out teachers and support teachers in the classroom. So we added a lot of people on campus, but we didn't necessarily support that teacher in regards to the new stressors that were coming on board. So once we got a lot of information, got a lot of data, we started to look into that. And, these are some of the categories that came up, even going back, was just, okay, what does a lack of resources mean? We really honed in on the specifics of that for our schools. And it was different by school and made sure that we were able to look and address that. We did some cool things from the data that really helped us address these different things. I don't get paid enough for what I have to do anymore. Student behavior is out of control. I can't teach during the day because kids are just acting up and I don't have the resources or the support for that. Lack of work-life balance. I'm here 12, 14 hours a day. Used to only be here 8, 10 hours a day. And then PD, what is my school doing for me?
Please keep in mind, so we're talking about issues, but we're also going to talk about solutions, right? So right now we're talking about the boatload of challenges, but they're going to be solutions. So as you hear this, you're like, oh my God, okay, what do I do? What do I do? So both Bill, Jason, and I, we're going to, and after this slide, we're going to switch into how do we address them? And maybe from that, you can get some strategies. So the last challenge in the boat here, at the boatload, is it's low trust and collaboration. So out of all the challenges you heard, the financial, the enrollment, the burnout, all that, the outcome of that in an organization is that your trust, your credibility is going to be low. And the morale is going to be low, right? So for us, for ACE, that meant when I walked in there is that I had the school sites, there was low trust at the school sites themselves, the staff and the teachers, and then in between the schools, right? So instead of having 2 + 2 = 4, we had 2 + 2 = like 2.5. So the negativity of one particular group of teachers or staff would bring down the rest of the network. It got so bad that I suspended the network gathering, the professional development that we had as a group. I said, no. We're going to do PD individually at the school sites. And when we're ready, when the morale is up, then we'll bring people together. Because instead of coming and celebrating and walking away with happy, I found that folks were coming and getting upset at other folks at other schools. And the CMO was always the favorite target for why things weren't working and everything bad in the universe. So it took about 2 years, but the third year, we finally came back together and the morale was much different. So the causes of these, again, broken promises, lack of consistent systems and process, and poor communication. And you're going to say, well, I don't do broken promises, but that doesn't happen in my school. But the reality is, when you go talk to your teachers, to your staff, they expect something from you. I mean, I walk into staff meetings, sometimes I wonder why I do this, why I put myself through that. But they'll say, hey, we're so busy with the students, but we have these challenges. It is your job to find the solution, to find an ELD teacher, English learner development teacher, train them, make sure they're the right fit, and bring us the solution because we're busy teaching. Right? The reality is the solution is a team effort, right? So the central office, you guys are not in a little bubble where your whole time is just to figure out the solution, go and get a solution, bring it to them. It doesn't work, but they feel that. They don't know your world, right? So that's where their perception and what they want from you may not be aligned with your capabilities. So that's where the low trust comes from. That's where the broken promises. Some of them are real, some of them are perceived. So these are all the challenges. So what I'd like to do now is just maybe give you guys like 2 minutes, and we're going to think about the 7 challenges. I think they're right here, right? Financial deficit, enrollment decline, academic underperformance, mental wellness crisis, and turnover, and low trust. It's not that, but low trust. So break out into I guess 3, like you 3 there, or 2 if there's only 2 here, but try to get together with your row and just prioritize those and then just say why you would, what's the rationale for coming up with a priority that you come up with? What's number 1? What's number 2? What's number 3? What's number 4? And why? And I'm going to give you 2 minutes. All right, so let's go ahead and invite group and let's just share what is your priority and then why did you pick 1 and 2? So like this group over here. Maybe.
I would just say that, well, your financial house, so like our schools don't run deficits, but you have to have a strong financial shop. That's just critical. And the other is just your academic performance. Because again, that's what you're in the business to do. And that's also high stakes that you must do very well. So those would be the 2 top priorities.
So you don't get renewed if you have a deficit or
You don't have people wanting to come to you to enroll.
Right.
Right. You're not doing a good job. It's
Right. Okay, good. Now, this group, I think it was you 4. I'm not. Oh, you 3, sorry. So who gets?
So, our big one is academic performance right now, just because we're middle track and that's a dangerous place to be. And we would like to be higher. And then of course, followed really closely by, you don't want your enrollment to decline because then you end up in financial deficit. And that kind of leads to turnover and all sorts of other issues. So those are ours.
Yeah, you said it right. You don't want low enrollment because that just leads to, a slippery slope. Okay, so then you were with them. All right, so you 3, what's the mic?
We kind of went to multiple places, honestly, but I actually was saying that I wouldn't focus on any one of those specifically. Since I'm joining the organization, I'm going to be talking about what are we doing well, where are our strengths, because I think that you need to stop enrollment loss and also build your reputation as a school, which of course is going to clean up a lot of different things, hopefully inspire our staff to be more motivated, be part of the team, excited about the work we're engaging in, those kinds of things. And then she was kind of pointing out, it really matters where you're at with regard to renewal. And I agree that might change priorities
Yes.
to other things.
And so
She
in
was.
your case, are you close to renewal? Yeah, okay.
But if renewal was up, I think she was talking about finances and academic as your two big focus.
All right, thank you. And then next group, let me come over here. You two? Yes, okay. Thank you. You get the hot.
Like, well, we agreed, gosh, sorry, Liz was saying that she right now just inherited a new school and she's feeling like she really needs to focus on the mental wellness and the turnover. Because she's feeling like it's actually causing, the low academic performance and the declining enrollment. And then I'm from Paradise and we just went back up there 4 years ago after the fire and I told her, yeah, those were the two that we had to focus on, but we're now to the point where we're focusing on the academic performance and the enrollment decline. So I feel like they kind of go hand in hand.
I just wanted to check. So we are in an area now with after AB 1505 that we have, a lot, the new dashboard, right? And so this is the year where a lot of the first schools actually get tested. And so one of my schools just went up for renewal and we had low academic performance. So like we had red all the way around. But we actually ended up with one yellow. And you have two categories. So the whole AB 1505 for renewal is like, you need to get two middles, right? And to get one is the school-wide performance. And then the second criteria is the growth, right? And so we were able to, although because we serve students for second chances, we were able to get a yellow, even a blue in terms of graduation rates and suspension rates. So there's some non-academic ones that are going to be crucial for schools like ours that we are always going to be for the last 16 years. Our students are basically to be at the high school, in order to be an alternative dashboard, you need to have 70% 70% are other foster, unduplicated, but it's their criteria is that you can be pregnant, foster, high suspension, expulsion, dropouts, those are the criteria. My schools are in the 50%, right? So we're not quite an alternative dashboard, but so for us, we're always going to be low. But if you focus on the non-academic ones that are there, that's going to get you to the 5-year renewal. So we actually got the 5-year renewal on February 13th. So there's hope for the low performing dashboard as well. Okay, so then the next group was U3.
I kind of dominated our conversation. They were like my therapists. I'm just a board member, so I'm not a teacher but I a new charter school in Irvine, dual immersion, mandarin immersion. So we're just starting out. I hear a lot of buzz and I think my biggest one would be low trust in the front office versus the teachers, because we're all new and we're all trying to figure it out and how to deal with that.
Okay. Well, that's great. So you all then free drink for support. All right, and then this group over here, U3, who wants to mic?
So ours kind of toggled back and forth between finances and academic performance and enrollment, those three, because you have to have really positive academic performance in order to get the enrollment. So we had a discussion around that, if that's even turnover. We kind of hit on all those boxes, but the main one was making sure you have the performance to get the enrollment, and get the enrollment, and get the ABA, so you can get finances in order.
They are all connected. I mean, that's the thing. It's hard to choose because they're all connected. All right. So this was everybody here one group? Or was there one group? Okay, who's going to be the?
Jason and I have talked about this a lot. For me, priority 1, 2, and 3 are academic performance. And since coming back from the pandemic, the majority of our schools haven't gotten back to where they used to be. And so that has really been the area of focus for us.
Again, and also it depends on your mission, right? Because some folks are oriented to serve a different population. But mostly you're right. Okay, so now we have to speed up. Oops, this is going back. So we're gonna go through the solutions very quickly. So financial stabilization. For me at ACE, the way we did that is we outsourced the back office to stabilize the financial department. So we were lucky to, we went out with, I looked at all the back office providers, and for me, this is not a commercial. Charter Impact, was the one that we were, thought we were the higher quality. And 3 years later, we made a bad, no, it turned out to be a really good decision. And then we right-sized the organization by reducing staff by 40%. The way we did that is, it was just, we did not backfill, right? So it was not layoffs. So in other words, if you start doing a bunch of layoffs, morale is going to plummet. So we just were very strategic in that backfilling, so we knew ahead of time. However, the positions that we didn't backfill for, what do? Who takes on those responsibilities, right? So we looked at them and we did the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule. So we took most of the time it worked out this way, 20% of the responsibility that were key, and we redistributed it among the team. Now, the team kept getting smaller and smaller in the central office. The central office was the one that downsized the most. We were 60% less than where we started. And so we led by example. Now, there's some things that we could not, we didn't have the skill set remaining inside. So for the people that left that had critical skill sets, we basically turned them into consultants. So it turns out that about 20% of what they do, we still need it done. We didn't have the talent. And so we ended up paying about 20% of what we were paying before, previous to them. And they're very happy. They have full-time jobs somewhere else, and now they have a consulting, relationship with us. And so they're happy and we're happy. And then we asked the schools to balance the budget. So this was really critical. I went bottom up. I went to the schools and I said, this is how much you need to cut from your budget. These are your positions. You choose how we get to that number. But you never, ever want to say, the central office knows the answer to what the best answer is. This is it. A lot of times they didn't come up with the best answer, but I let them suffer 1 year through. Like one team said, we don't want to give up, we want to give up prep time. Like, really? Okay. So they did it. A year later, they're like, you know what? We're ready to get our prep time back, and we're just going to take out an FTE over here. But you have to let the staff do that, because if you do it for them, they're not going to be very happy, and they're going to assume that their lack of happiness is due to your decisions. And then increase fundraising effort, and then we targeted large grants like the community school partnership programs. And then the enrollment growth, I really spoke about. The key there is just that we invested $300,000. More than half of that was in social marketing. So we partnered up with Larson Communications, which I think they service a lot of charter schools, and they do Google AdSense, Facebook, Meta. We hired 9 parents and assigned 3 parents per school. So they did a lot of canvassing. They did a lot of door knocking. We also did advertisement through billboards on buses, on the exterior of the bus and inside the bus. And we also had, we rented out boards inside the malls and also inside the hospitals. There's these electronic billboards that you can rent space on. And then radio spots. We also did we do a lot of community-based partnerships, especially for the demographics that we're targeting. So for like Vietnamese community, we're going and we're doing huge celebrations around the Lunar New Year, the Chinese New Year. For the Hispanic population, we engage in Días de los Muertos. It's just really we let the community know that we not only want your students, but we also want to be part of your community. We want to do something positive, be a good partner. And then we refined the school message. Instead of being the school for second chances, we became the school for if your child needs a smaller setting, a small group setting, they need smaller teacher-student ratio, we are the school for you. So kind of rebranding yourself to kind of open up the pipeline through these two.
So first of all, we introduced a comprehensive instructional coaching model to get back to the basics for what worked for us instructionally. This is kind of like a no-nonsense, high accountability process, going through every classroom, doing it consistently. This coach was not, say, a principal, but someone who was working in conjunction with the school principal. making sure the principal went on these walks with his coach, saw the same thing. So when the coach wasn't there, the principal can also piggyback and go in those rooms and already know what to look for and how to communicate it. We prioritize professional development for teachers that, of course, aligned with that first bullet. We created action plans that were tailored to each school's needs because all of our schools are in different types of communities and, of course, have different unique needs. We really were focused more on what does this specific school community need? The school community could be based on the staff and what that staff needs. We have one or more staff that are kind of more or less resilient than one another. We implemented greater accountability systems for adhering to existing instructional model and assessment systems, again, piggybacking on the first two bullets. Increasing instructional outcomes, accountability from principal to teachers. So the thing about this one, in conjunction with the coaching, it's one thing to go into classrooms and to see something that's working or not working. It's another thing to communicate that to the teacher. They do it in a way that gets them in a mindset to actually want to improve, that you are on their side, that you are truly coaching them in partnership and not trying to say, I gotcha, and finding something negative. So there's a whole process that we had to go through to make sure our principals understood how to have those conversations. It's still an ongoing process for sure, but it starts to build a trust factor. All the teachers, when we're not around, are talking about how valuable the coaching's been when either our instructional coach goes in the room or our principals do. But going back to staffing and having to cut staff, it's also about having courageous conversations with our principals. I don't know how many times we've gone to a principal and said, here's this teacher's data. Do you really want to keep this teacher? Yes, give them one more year. Then the data comes in next year and they're worse. We say, told you so. And this keeps happening over and over and over again. So it's kind of helping to build that thick skin of the principal to be able to make those tough decisions. Sometimes you have to hold their hand and do it with them and literally sit down and have those tough conversations, model them for the principal and have them do it in front of you so that they're doing it right and get them to the place where they're independent. That's never easy. It's never easy to tell somebody you're not going back. And then finally, improve articulation and communication between the central office and school sites. I heard someone touched on this in a way, kind of a lack of trust between, actually, I think it was the front office and the site admin. The same thing happens at the home office or central office and school sites. We're in a ivory tower. We come in like a thunderstorm and make decisions, and everybody's like, you don't know what's going on here. Well, a couple of things improves that. It can improve that. Number one, being consistent, being on sites more consistently so that people see you, people know that you know what's going on because you're there. Asking questions. When you go into classrooms or you talk to staff, finding positive things that you can see that are tangible, that you tell them, you're doing a great job with this or that. But one of the things I've seen before that does not work, if you go into classrooms or you go across campus, and you keep telling people, you're doing a great job. You're doing a great job. And that's all you say. Over time, they realize you really don't know what you're talking about. But when you say, you're doing a great job with this, I love how you're doing that. I love the improvement between the last time I was in here and now. And now all of a sudden, you know what you're talking about, and they know you're actually really watching. That is a big deal. Do not just say great job. And then making sure that the principals or site admin don't, when you're not around, side with the teacher and say, yeah, I know what you mean. When the chief academic officer comes in, what is this? So let's talk. Can't say. So when a chief academic officer comes in and starts doing the coaching and has some difficult things to say, they leave. That teacher goes to the principal and complains. That principal says, I know. Okay? That cannot happen. That cannot happen. That principal has to be trained, whoever's the administrator, on how to respond to that. The minute they do that, they just cut your legs out from under you. Okay? Whether you're a home office, a board member, it does not matter. Even if the principal agrees with that staff member, they cannot do that. And you've got to train them, and no matter what, they have to become savvy at that fine line between I support you as a principal, I've got your back, and I also support our home office and I have their back too. I have to somehow meld those two things. That's super hard. That takes savvy, that takes training and experience. But one of the things that is my task is to help our principals learn how to do that. Again, it's not easy. We saw improved proficiency. Am I jumping ahead or is this the right one still?
That's the right one. Yeah.
We saw improved proficiency rates in language arts and mathematics at all one campus, particularly with the most significant subgroups. We strengthened partnerships with authorizers for charter school renewals. We got Oceanside renewal in December. This one shocked me because it was at the county. All right, is anybody from San Diego County? All right, well, historically, if you've been around charter schools long enough, you know the county is mixed in how they treat or how they treated longitudinally charter schools, especially with approvals and renewals. So we got unanimous approval. I was shocked. If you would have told me 2 years before that, I would have shocked. But I want to touch on this really quickly. One of the things that made a big difference in that second bullet is we got board members to our school. The only board members that came to our school are the 2 board members I thought will not vote for us. So I'm thinking they're coming to find ways to not vote for us when they get to that point. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. I've got them. And now we're going to put on a show. And it wasn't just a show like you come in and everything looks cool. No, come into our office, sit down. Let me show you the data. Let me show you what we look like compared to our local district counterparts. Let me show you the populations we serve and how we've gone from 47% to 73% pre-reduced lunch eligible in just 3 years. And our scores keep increasing. Let me show you how that differential between us and the district keeps increasing. Well, they left like, oh, wow, blown away. Now, I didn't really know what would happen, but get those folks to your schools. Do it often. Definitely do it leading up to a renewal. It's never too late to get them to your school before the renewal vote. It's all about votes. That's all that matters. We created a strong and consistent coaching model that talked about, and we moved focus back to, as we heard, outcomes over feelings. But I do want to say, we do not disregard that. We actually instituted a mental health support system where we brought in an outside agency, and we are giving staff members right now up to 5 to 10 different private sessions with a counselor that's totally confidential, and we can track participation, obviously not by person, but by school and organization. We do it for some families as well, and people are taking advantage of this. I did not think anyone would do this. And in the beginning, I thought no one's going to trust us enough to actually talk to whoever and feel that it's confidential, let alone even have the interest of doing it. We had to keep increasing how many sessions we were allowing. Scary on one hand, but positive on another, that people were taking advantage of it. And so we doubled down on our investment of the mental health supports while doubling down on the academic outcomes. You need to do everything. You can't just say we're just going to do these things. So going back to the diagram you all saw, you had to pick. In my world, everything is important. Every single one of those things is important in varying ways for different reasons, even for different schools in different regions with different authorizers. Let's see. I think that pretty much addresses all of it. Okay. The mental health, and sorry, we have a health and wellness reimbursement. We reimburse them $500 a year for every full-time staff member for things like gym memberships. If you want to run a marathon, whatever it is, it can be something tangible like weights or protein powder, because then we would have to own it. But this was another commitment that we made to our team. We changed staff surveys. Bill talked about this. We do this twice a year because we want to be actionable during the year. So we do it mid-year so that people can see before the end of the year that we are actually taking act, we're reading their surveys, we're taking action on what we need to improve upon. We created a comprehensive trauma-informed practice program by partnering with high-quality and trusted vendors to provide individualized support for staff and families. So it wasn't just the thing I talked about. We have 2 different ways that we do this, and we have other kind of, lesser mechanisms to kind of engage the trauma-informed issues we have to deal with for our students and families. But again, our staff is traumatized too, hopefully not by us, and we're doing something about it. He's talked about that one. It's like this. These are two companies. So if you want to do this with mental health, here you and Care Solace. Here you and Care Solace, the trauma informed and mental health support that we are using to provide sessions for our staff. And you can control how many sessions you want to give. Let's say you want to allocate 3 per year per full-time staff member or any staff member. You just let them know and they kind of govern that for you. They track it and they give you data sheets, just show you kind of like even the topics that they're calling about. So it could be anything from suicide ideations, marital challenges, whatever it may be. You get a printout monthly of kind of what is tracking. It gives you a good idea in terms of what people are dealing with. Okay, there you go, Bill.
No problem. I'll be really brief. To address some of the burnout and staffing, sometimes some of the novel things that maybe we did that, we took a look at our school calendar and we made sure that, we didn't go any longer than 5 weeks without inserting, either a PD day, a holiday, made sure that the breaks were all aligned where we didn't extend too much. I think the previous calendar had a couple of 9-week in a row where you can see where your teachers are dragging and staff is really kind of hurting there. For the coaching, we could not afford instructional coaches full time, but we instituted a peer coaching program where each teacher got a stipend for getting a colleague and doing peer coaching and support. We also have a mental health day, one day where the whole school, all of our schools are off for that day, and it's just to address mental health of staff. A lot of the things that my colleagues addressed too, we had to clear out some room to show our teachers that we could still give them increases each year and all of our staff members. And then what we did was we showed them the comps, the local comps. And we showed them about, 2 years ago, we were probably in the 50 percentile. We moved up to about the 80th percentile in regards to how competitive we were and showed them on paper. And it goes a long way to do that. A lot of social emotional training for our teachers and ACEs training really kind of helped in regards to dealing with some of the student behavior issues. And then we instituted what we call a TAP, a teacher advisory panel that meets every other week, gives us a lot of great sort of ideas and solutions to help in regards to what teachers need to not get burned out. We did it through a reduction in our home office staff or CMO staff, turn a lot of things over to the schools for more autonomy. We made it a positive. We eliminated a position, they had supported that. We went ahead and gave more autonomy to the schools. I think the rest of the bullet points are pretty standard, what we did, but it's really helped. We actually, last year, the year that I came on board, we had, I think, 19 staff members elect to not return voluntarily. And then involuntarily, we had about 6 or 7. This year, we had 2 staff members voluntarily decided they're not coming back next year. So a lot of improvements. We did some recognitions. Or Ingenium, we did the Ingenies for 2 years where we make it like an Oscar-like award ceremony. One of the awards are peer nominated and the other are based on data. They can kind of cross over between who are the favorite teachers and the hardest working ones, and then the ones really getting great results. That's
This is the last slide, but I do want to double click on what Bill said in terms of when you do a compensation study. First of all, it's a really great idea to do one. We did one 3 years ago and we're doing an update again. Because you can show your staff, for us, we were in the 75 percentile and now we're showing we want to go to whatever the budget allows, 80, 85% compare. But the key thing that Bill said is that when you do that compensation study, show them your, the comps, what are the districts and the local charter schools or district schools doing? Because for teachers, it's about fairness, right? It's almost like they don't get paid enough and whatever you're going to pay them, it's just not going to be enough. But if you can show them that you're trying, that you are 80, 85% or 90%, whatever your budget can afford, that goes a long way to keeping them. All right. And so to end here, trust and collaboration. So the whole title for this is, how do you future-proof your company, your organization, your school? You really can't future-proof. We can't tell you what's going to happen in the future, right? So a lot of the solutions you've seen here may or may not apply because the challenge in the future may be similar, maybe not, right? But what you can take from here is the strategy, the thinking. So strategic thinking and adaptability are key. In other words, involve the organization, use surveys to discover the issues, increase collaboration and trust by decentralizing your decision making. Okay, don't, yes, the folks in the central office are really smart, wicked smart. But guess what? The school sites may not appreciate that. Go to them. It's not, the central office is not on the front line. They do not understand that little Johnny has a particular challenge, right? They're not dealing with Mary. So the teachers are. So let them make the decisions, that come up with the solutions and support those. Even if they're not the right one, well, so you can't go too far, right? But even when they're not the ideal solution, you're better off. Build a sustainable future for right sizing with dignity. By that, I mean, don't go into massive layoff. I was able to lay off or reduce the staff by 150 people in 3 years, and my morale went up. Think about that, right? And then resilience and strategic leadership. So, and then to double click then on something that Jason said as well, which is relationships. So for renewals, you're playing two games, parallel games. One of them is your dashboard, the academics, getting your metrics in order. But the other one is a relationship with the board, with the votes of your authorizer, right? It's all about the votes, like Jason said. And building that when they come to you, building those relationships, you can turn someone who's going to be against you for you by showing them the awesome job that you do. For me, because we're a school of second chances, I always remind them, these are the kids that we serve. You don't want them in your district. They take a lot of money to serve. So if you do not renew us, get ready to increase your budget, right? And that message goes out. I mean, so far it's resonated. Right? And then the last thing is stay, again, we don't know what the future holds, but be resilient, be open to the feedback of your people, of your employees, and just be strategic in your decision making. And with that, you can really navigate any challenge.